My name is Naomi, 32 years old, living in a small town near Denver, Colorado. I used to have a stable job at an accounting firm, with an income that wasn't high but enough to support myself and help my parents when needed. But because I believed the sweet promises of a man, I gave up my career path with my own hands, leaving behind everything that once made me proud, turning myself into a shadow in this very house. I met Ethan at a reunion with old friends. He was 35, a middle manager at a construction company. From the very first meeting, I was drawn in by his gentle words and the way he showed care. Ethan wasn't flashy, but he knew how to make others feel special. After a few months of dating, Ethan started talking about the future. He painted a picture of a home filled with laughter, children, and both sides of the family gathering together. He emphasized, "All I need is you. You stay home and take care of the family. I'll handle everything else out there." On our wedding day, I still remember my mother's look as she saw me off. Her eyes were full of worry, and she kept reminding me, "Naomi, always keep something for yourself, don't give everything to someone else." But I was overwhelmed with happiness then, believing that Ethan would never let me down. Ethan asked me to quit my job just a month after our wedding. His reasons sounded so reasonable. They're working and handling meals, and my mother needs someone to care for her. "You'll burn yourself out, I make enough for the whole family." I hesitated but eventually agreed, thinking this sacrifice was worth it. My mother-in-law Carol was 65 years old and had been paralyzed on one side after a stroke a few years ago. She had lived with us from the day I became her daughter-in-law. She spoke little, but her gaze always felt like she was scrutinizing me, silently blaming me for not being quick or thorough enough. At first I did everything I could to care for her, hoping for a word of praise or at least a nod, but that silence and look never changed. In the first few months, Ethan kept his promise. He gave me his entire paycheck to manage household expenses. I carefully recorded every expense, from utility bills, food, and medicine for my mother-in-law, down to the last cent for my own milk. Every time Ethan came home, I showed him the budget notebook, hoping he'd see how hard I was trying. But then, things started to change. Ethan no longer gave me his full salary. He said, "I have to keep some for entertaining clients and networking. My job requires it." At first it was a few $100s, then a few thousand. When I asked about it, he snapped, "You're always going on about money. Do you think I'm a printing machine?" Our monthly budget shrank from over $4,000 to $2,000, then even less. When it dropped to just $1,200, I felt like a beggar in my own home. Every time I needed to buy something for my mother-in-law or our household, I had to wait until Ethan was in a good mood and had free time to bring up money. Sometimes I texted, "Honey, I need to buy medicine for Mom." His reply was short, "I'm busy, later." One night, I sat calculating, looking at the remaining amount, barely $40, and felt my heart sink. I had once been a confident woman who could buy what she needed without begging anyone. Now, I had to think twice just to afford shampoo or a carton of milk for my mother-in-law. I started fearing my own silence over the years. I feared my mother-in-law's gaze when I told her I didn't have enough money for her supplements. As for Ethan, he still came home late, still complained about being tired, and still left behind trimmed-down pay envelopes after the sweet words that had long since faded. And I knew if I didn't stand up for myself, no one would care for me but me. That night I sat alone in the cold kitchen, staring at the worn-out wallet Ethan had given me on our first anniversary. Inside was barely $40. Was that enough to buy cough syrup and milk for Sophie, our precious 3-year-old daughter? Sophie's dry cough echoed from the bedroom, tightening my chest. I grabbed my phone and texted Ethan, "Honey, Sophie is very sick. I need money to buy her medicine. Please send it soon." The message went unanswered. I waited 5 minutes, then 10, and the screen stayed silent, just like this house. I couldn't hold back and sent another message. "I'm begging you. She needs medicine. Don't let her suffer any more." Finally, Ethan replied with a single word, "Busy." I felt the blood in my veins freeze. Busy? He was too busy to care about his own daughter's health? My hands shaking, I called Rachel, an old classmate who still checked in on me now and then. "Rachel, I'm sorry to bother you. Could I borrow a few $100s? Sophie is sick. I need to buy her medicine right away. Rachel didn't ask anything else. She just gently said, Naomi, come get it. Don't feel bad. I grabbed Sophie and ran out into the freezing Colorado night, my tears mixing with the cold wind. After buying the medicine, I took her to the nearby clinic. The doctor said she had a mild case of pneumonia and needed careful monitoring. I nodded, holding her hand tightly, silently vowing to protect her at all costs. When we returned, the house lights were still on, but my heart felt dark. I had just laid Sophie down when Carol called out from the next room. Where did you go all night, leaving an old cripple here to starve, useless woman? I bit my lip, swallowing my anger. I went to make porridge for her and set it on the table. She looked at the bowl, then flung it to the floor. A woman like you is only good at putting on a show, can't even cook properly, and you brought a brat into this house for what? Her words cut deep. I knelt down to clean up the mess, tears streaming down my face, too exhausted to wipe them away. Just then Ethan walked in. His lazy glance passed over me and settled on his mother. Mom, what did Naomi do now to upset you? I looked up, my voice catching. Do you know? Sophie's sick. I had to borrow money from a friend for her medicine. I've been texting and calling you all day for a little money for our child. Do you think I enjoy begging like a pauper? Ethan frowned, his tone sharp. Stop the act. You have one job. Take care of the house. And you complain? I'm working myself to death, and all you do is talk about money and problems? I took a breath, held his gaze without flinching. My voice steady now. You're right. I am a problem, because I've stayed quiet too long. But from now on, this Naomi won't bother anyone again. Carol glared at me. What's that supposed to mean? You planning to abandon this house and let me and my son starve? A freeloader like you dares to talk back? I turned to look at her, and for the first time in my life, my eyes held no fear. That's right. From now on, I'm done. No more cooking, no more cleaning, no more caring for anyone except my daughter. I was a fool to think that if I sacrificed, people would appreciate it. Turns out, I was just an unpaid servant in this house. Ethan slammed his keys on the table. Go ahead, try not lifting a finger and see what happens to this house. Don't make me step in. I gave a cold smile, my voice calm. You'd better learn how to take care of your mother yourself. From today, Naomi is no longer your housekeeper or your cook. I carried Sophie back to our room, feeling light even though tears still fell. In that moment, I knew I had crossed the line between endurance and awakening. And I knew this was only the beginning of the storm Ethan and his mother would have to face. The next morning, I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and quietly looked out the window. The sun was rising over the rooftops covered in mist, but inside I felt nothing but cold. Sophie was still asleep, her little face pale after a night battling her cough. I knew that if I kept living like this, I would not only destroy myself but also ruin my daughter's childhood. I dressed Sophie, packed a light snack, and took her out of the house. I ignored the shrill voice of Carol yelling behind me. Where do you think you're going? Who's going to make my breakfast? Heartless woman! I didn't answer, didn't even bother to look back. At this point, her words couldn't pierce my heart anymore. We caught a bus to the city center. I took Sophie straight to Ethan's office. His office was in a high-rise building in downtown Denver. Standing at the reception desk, I took a deep breath for courage and said, I'm Ethan Moore's wife. I need to see him right now. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic look, probably noticing my tired face and swollen eyes from lack of sleep. She made a call upstairs, and just a few minutes later, Ethan appeared in his sharp suit, his face darkening the moment he saw us. He pulled me into a corner, his voice harsh. Naomi, what are you trying to pull here? I'm working. Don't bring this pitiful mess here to ruin me. I held my ground, my tone unwavering. I'm not here to ruin anyone. I'm here to hand over your daughter. Yesterday I took care of her, today it's your turn. I have things I need to do. Ethan was speechless, looking at Sophie clinging to his sleeve, her eyes wide and confused. He muttered, Naomi, I have a meeting. How am I supposed to look after a kid in the office? Who would accept that? I smirked. If no one accepts it, figure it out. You said you support the whole family, that you're so capable. Now it's your time to prove it. Without waiting for his response, I bent down, kissed Sophie on the forehead, and said, Be good, sweetheart. Today, stay with Daddy. Mommy has to go take care of our future. Sophie's eyes welled up, but she nodded, so sweet it broke my heart. I turned and walked away quickly, ignoring Ethan's frustrated voice calling after me. I went straight to a reputable employment center in the suburbs. The coordinator reviewed my file, listened to me describe my 5 years of experience caring for a paralyzed person, and nodded approvingly. Actually, you're a great fit for this job. There's a family looking for someone to care for an elderly lady who's paralyzed in both legs. The pay is $6,500 a month. They need someone patient who can handle a difficult temperament. I smiled confidently and replied, for me, no one could be more difficult than my mother-in-law. After just one interview, they hired me on the spot. I left the center with a preliminary contract in hand, feeling like I'd shed a massive weight. I had found my way out. That afternoon, I went back to pick up Sophie. Ethan looked at me, both angry and helpless. You're unbelievable, leaving her here all day. I almost lost an important contract because she cried in the office. I looked at him calmly. I didn't abandon her. I was out finding a job, so I wouldn't have to beg you for money anymore. From now on, you take care of your mom yourself. I won't serve anyone but my daughter. Carol overheard me and immediately shrieked. How dare you? Ungrateful woman. I took care of you all these years and now you're abandoning me? You wretch. My voice was cold as ice. You took care of me? Count it up? How many years have I woken up before dawn, stayed up all night and waited on you without pay? If you hired someone else, it would have cost you at least $5,000 a month. I'm just asking for fairness now. That night, I cooked a simple meal for me and Sophie. Ethan sat in silence, not daring to ask for a bite. Carol grumbled from her room, but no one paid attention. I held my daughter close, and one clear thought echoed in my mind. Tomorrow will be different. Naomi is awake now. From the very first morning I announced I was done with the household duties, that house fell into chaos. Ethan rushed off to work at the crack of dawn, leaving last night's dinner mess still on the table. Carol lay in her room yelling for help every time she needed something, but no one answered. I still cared for Sophie, but I didn't lift a finger for anything involving the house or my mother-in-law anymore. After just 3 days, Ethan was a wreck. He called everywhere to find a housekeeper, and finally hired a young Mexican woman named Maria, recommended by a coworker. Maria entered the house confidently, but within half a day, I heard her sobbing as she ran out the door, muttering in a mix of English and Spanish. She's like a monster. I can't do this. Carol didn't stop cursing. What kind of help is that? So slow just to bring water, probably only good at stealing. I watched in silence, unmoved. I had been the unpaid help for years. Now it was someone else's turn to see what that felt like. That night, Ethan came home exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, his tie askew. He threw his briefcase onto a chair and sighed. Naomi, you win. See? No one can handle my mother. What do you want so you'll come back? I didn't bother to look up. I don't want anything. I just want to take care of myself and my daughter. Your mother? You handle that yourself. The next day, Ethan hired another housekeeper, an older woman who, I heard, had over 10 years of experience caring for the elderly. I thought to myself, maybe she'll last a bit longer, but in less than 3 days, she too ran off, leaving behind just one sentence before she left. That old woman is unbearable. I'd rather care for an entire nursing home than deal with her. The house grew heavier with Carol's endless complaints and Ethan's grumbling. His work started to suffer. Online meetings in the middle of the workday were constantly interrupted by his mother's yelling. Ethan, hurry up, I fell out of bed. Are you going to let your mother starve to death on the floor? One day, when I brought Sophie back from the park, I heard Ethan shouting at his mother as soon as I reached the door. Mom, I'm begging you, stop calling me during meetings. You cost me a contract. Carol snapped back, her voice dripping with bitterness. Blaming everything on me? Huh? This is my fault? It's because you married that useless woman that she abandoned you and me. For the first time, I heard Ethan lose it. He roared. It's you who's the problem. If you hadn't made Naomi suffer all these years, she wouldn't have left. Look at yourself. Their shouting filled the house, making Sophie cling to me in fear. I bent down and soothed her. It's okay, sweetie, it'll all pass. But deep inside I knew this was just the beginning of the hell Ethan and his mother had brought upon themselves. Word of Ethan's fights with his mother spread through the neighborhood. The neighbors who once pitied me now whispered. Naomi was wise to walk away. No one could survive that chaos. Every time Ethan came home, he looked like a ghost, worn out, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights caring for his mother, juggling the house, and trying to manage his work. I kept my promise. I didn't touch anything that wasn't for me and Sophie. I cooked for the two of us, did our laundry, and left everything else alone. Ethan no longer had that arrogant, cold look he used to wear. Sometimes I caught him quietly watching me, his eyes showing a mix of regret and helplessness. But I no longer cared. I was too tired from years of silent suffering. Now it was his turn to feel abandoned. And I knew when this house completely fell apart, it wouldn't be because I left. It would be because they destroyed it with their own selfishness and tyranny. The house, already in chaos, grew heavier with the sharp arguments between Ethan and Carol. I tried to keep Sophie away from their shouting matches, but there was no escaping the angry voices echoing through the walls. That afternoon, I had just finished bathing Sophie and was drying her hair when I heard things being smashed in the living room. Ethan's voice was full of frustration. "Mom, enough! I'm at my limit. Are you trying to drive me insane?" Carol screamed back. "If you're useless, admit it. Don't take it out on me. If that woman hadn't left, I wouldn't be in this mess." I sighed and hugged Sophie tight. I had once hoped Ethan would wake up after everything, but he still seemed blind, unable to see the real cause of the tragedy in this house. Smashing sounds continued. I heard glass shatter on the floor, and then a terrifying sound came from the balcony. A heavy object crashing down, followed by a scream from the street. My heart raced as I ran out, to find the balcony door wide open, the wind whipping the curtains. I rushed to the balcony, panic tightening my chest. Looking down, I froze. Ethan lay motionless on the sidewalk, blood pooling around him. A shattered glass tumbler lay beside his head. Bystanders gathered, and someone had already called 911. Best fury flared in my eyes as I faced Carol. She trembled in her wheelchair, her face white as a sheet, her hands still shaking. I didn't mean to. He needed to be taught a lesson. I just threw it to scare him. I didn't think. I was speechless. All the anger, all the resentment I had bottled up broke loose. But in front of me was a tragedy I hadn't foreseen. I carried Sophie to our room, locked the door, and called the police. Within minutes, the ambulance and officers arrived. They secured the scene and checked on Ethan, but I could already see the answer in the medic's eyes. Ethan had died the moment the glass struck his head. The police came upstairs and took our statements. I told them everything. I was in the room, heard them arguing, heard the glass break and the scream. I ran out and saw him lying there. Their tone was both gentle and firm as they asked, "Did you throw the glass?" Carol sobbed and wailed. "I didn't mean to. I was just so angry. I didn't think it would hit him. Oh God, my son." The officers took notes thoughtfully. The evidence was clear, but the situation wasn't simple. Carol was paralyzed on one side, old, frail. After consideration, they filed a report and released her pending further investigation. That night, the house was eerily silent. I sat with Sophie, quietly stroking her hair as she fell asleep in my arms, unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded. My mind was blank. Ethan, the man who once swore to protect us, who made me give up my career and turned me into a shadow in my own home, now lay down there, gone because of his mother's moment of madness. The next morning, the police returned with news. Given Carol's health and that this was a spontaneous act without intent to kill, she won't face criminal charges. But this was still a serious accident and the family should prepare for the arrangements. I simply nodded. I had no strength left to react, no tears left to cry. I looked at Carol, sitting silently, her eyes weary and hollow. Maybe even she hadn't imagined that it would be her own hands that ended it all. But deep in my heart I knew, this wasn't just an accident. This was the result of countless days of tormenting one another, of selfishness, of resentment, piling up until there was no way out. And this tragedy, as painful as it was the final wake-up call for me. It was time to leave this place for good. Ethan's funeral took place under a heavy, somber atmosphere. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't sad, but because my tears had dried up long ago. With Sophie's small hand in mine, I watched the casket descend, my heart heavy with unspoken sorrow. A small weight seemed lifted, though sorrow still clung to me. After Ethan's death, his assets were divided according to the law. Without a will, everything was split evenly between me, Sophie, and Carol. The house that had been my personal hell, the bank accounts, Ethan's small shares in his company, all were transparently detailed by the lawyer in a meeting right after the funeral. Carol still tried to maintain her pride, sitting in her wheelchair, her eyes filled with blame every time she looked at me. But she knew well, she no longer had any power over me. I accepted my share of the estate without complaint, just eager to cut ties and leave this place behind. A few weeks later, I took Sophie and left that gloomy house, moving to a modest little home on the edge of the city, where she could run around the yard and breathe fresh air. I sold off my share of Ethan's assets to fund our new life. I kept only what was enough to raise Sophie properly, no greed, no regrets. Meanwhile, Carol began to suffer the consequences of her own bitterness. She stubbornly refused to hire professional care, always claiming I still have family. I don't need outsiders to look after me. But the family she counted on were those distant relatives who had avoided her for years, now showing up pretending to care, after hearing she'd inherited a decent sum. At first they played the part, someone fetched her medicine, someone cooked, someone cleaned. But within a few months, once they realized she was just as difficult as ever, the sweet words faded. In their place were annoyed glances, whispered complaints behind her back. One day I even heard her nephew grumbling over the phone. "Why won't this old woman give up already? How are we supposed to get paid for this forever?" I heard about it all from an old neighbor, Linda, who had witnessed my suffering in that house many times. She called me, her voice both bitter and satisfied. "Naomi, you know what? Carol's being drained dry by those relatives. They hate her, they're just waiting for her to die so they can be done with it." I didn't feel happy, nor was I sad. It was the price she paid for a life spent thinking only of herself and treating others like tools. But Carol was the type who wouldn't give up, even at the end. One day the family's lawyer called me, his voice full of surprise. "Naomi, before she passed, Carol redid her will. She left the entire house and what was left of her assets to Sophie, not a cent to those relatives." I was stunned. Not because I felt joy or regret, but because I understood. This wasn't love for Sophie. It was her final act of revenge against those she once trusted. When Carol died, not a single relative stepped up to handle the funeral. I looked at the cold, empty house and felt a heavy weight in my heart. In the end, out of responsibility and for Sophie's sake, I arranged a simple but decent service for her. Afterwards, I completed the paperwork and sold the house. The money was enough to secure a good education for Sophie. Carol's relatives came looking for me, both bitter and pleading. "Naomi, at least share a little with us. How can you just keep everything she left behind?" I simply gave a cold smile. What Carol left was her decision. If you're angry, take it up with her, not me. And so, the cycle of resentment Carol built over a lifetime ended in the bitterness she sowed. As for me, for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Before the house of so many bitter years, I took in the sight of the open gate, a strange calm within me. That house had once been where I placed my hopes, where I gave up my youth in exchange for the dream of family happiness. But it had all turned to ashes in arguments, tears, and finally a tragedy no one wished for. Now, it was just an empty shell. Nothing left to hold me there. I sold the house, using the money to start a new life with Sophie in a small coastal town in Oregon. A peaceful place with tree-lined streets and gentle sea breezes, so different from the stifling air of the old house. I bought a small, charming home with 2 bedrooms and a front yard with bougainvillea vines, the kind Sophie had always admired in pictures. In those first days, I focused on putting everything in order. I painted Sophie's room myself in her favorite shade of blue, hung the floral paintings we'd made together. I enrolled her in a nearby school where teachers and classmates were kind and welcoming. She quickly settled in, no longer with that anxious look she used to have at the old house. her smile became the precious remedy that eased the last traces of sorrow in my heart. I found work at a senior care center. This time I no longer felt ashamed or thought I was lowering myself. I was proud that my job made me independent, able to provide for myself and my daughter. The pay wasn't high, but it was honest money, earned by my own hands, without begging anyone or enduring anyone's contempt. At night, when Sophie was asleep, I sat on the porch, listening to the distant waves, feeling an unfamiliar peace. I thought of the past, of the days I endured, foolishly hoping sacrifice would make people value me. It turned out, respect starts from within. If I didn't respect myself, I couldn't expect others to. That was the most valuable lesson I learned from it all. Sometimes, my new neighbors would chat and ask about my past. I just gave a quiet smile, just old stories. What matters is my daughter and I are safe and happy now. That's enough. I no longer felt the need to explain or reopen old wounds. The past is the past. My focus is on today and tomorrow. Sophie grew up surrounded by the love and peace I worked hard to build. She often ran up to hug me and say, "Mom, you're my superhero." Every time she said that, I felt every hardship was worth it. I knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but we had truly left the shadows of the past behind. And I silently thanked myself, the woman who seemed to have fallen but found the strength to rise, to choose freedom and self-respect, and to reclaim true value and happiness. Looking back at the journey, I understand that happiness doesn't come from blind sacrifice or waiting for others to see your worth. It comes when you stand on your own feet, with self-respect and independence. That's when peace and respect follow. Our life now is simple but full of love and freedom. Every morning I wake up grateful that I chose to leave the darkness and walk a new path, where my worth is defined by no one but me. What do you think of Naomi's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional stories and meaningful lessons about family life.